Bonjour à toutes et à tous et bienvenue dans une nouvelle vidéo sur Learn to French. Je m'appelle Eden et j'enseigne le français. Hello and welcome to another video on Learn to French. If you are new here, my name is Eden and I teach French. Aujourd'hui, j'aimerais parler de l'apprentissage du français en contexte. This video is if you are learning French, of course, but it can also be applied to other languages. Learning a language, learning French, can be incredibly rewarding, especially if you're learning by yourself. And today I wanted to talk about learning French by yourself, but also focusing on context and comprehensive input. This means learning vocabulary, grammar, and skills that are directly relevant to your goals and immersing yourself in meaningful content, not just blindly learning for learning. If you don't have a tutor, it's really important to structure your learning to make it as practical and effective as possible. And I wanted to share some tips with you today. First of all, let's talk about why context matters when you're learning French. Learning French in context helps you understand how words and grammar are used in real-life situations. So you can see that there's a direct use to those skills that you've been learning. If you memorize isolated vocabulary or grammar rules, you might not find it useful, or you could know the grammar in French. You can know the conjugation, you can know the grammar, but it's useless if you don't know how or when to apply that grammar or conjugation. So learning in context will teach you how to apply the skills that you've learned in French naturally. Let's say you're learning a new verb today. Instead of learning réserver, instead of just learning the verb réserver and the conjugation, to book, learn it in context. For example, in the context of booking a hotel room. Je voudrais réserver une chambre pour 2 nuits, s'il vous plaît. I would like to book a room for 2 nights, please. But you can also apply learning in context for tenses. So instead of memorizing the past tense in isolation, learn it by talking about your weekend. Samedi, je suis allée au parc. On Saturday, I went to the park. By focusing on context, you will retain information better and you will feel more comfortable and confident using French in real-life situations. My teaching style and also my learning style is very goal-oriented. It's important to set clear goals when you're learning something, especially if you're learning a language. To set clear goals, what do you need to do? You'll need to start by identifying why you want to learn that language, why you want to learn French, and what you want to achieve. That gives you a clear idea, a global idea. If you would like to focus on what you want to achieve, for each goal, you will need to break it down into specific skills. This takes a bit more time and practice, but in the end, you'll find it really helpful. So for each goal, break it down into specific skills, vocabulary, and grammar you need to master to achieve that goal. Let's get back to our hotel room reservation. Our goal here is to book a hotel room in French. What is the vocabulary that you need to know? What is the grammar that you need to know? And how can you practice? So the vocabulary should be simple. Everything related to hotels, hotel rooms, and perhaps booking. So the nouns, when you're learning vocabulary, it's also good to write down the gender of the noun in French and maybe the plural form of that noun in case it's irregular. So instead of writing chambre, write down une chambre. Instead of writing lit, write down un lit. You'll need to learn the verbs as well. So réserver, to book, appeler, to call. So what's important here is to maybe write down the verbs in your native language first, and then look for them in French. Something fun that you can do is maybe go to a hotel website and translate the website in French, or directly go to that website if it's French. You can also use booking websites that are international, such as booking.com, and use it in French. As for the grammar, what do we need to learn when it comes to booking a hotel room? We will need to learn polite phrases in French. Je voudrais, I would like. You will also need to learn maybe numbers for dates and prices, how you can use them, how you should structure your sentences for that. And of course, question forms. Est-ce que, or polite questions. In the daily life, at least in France, we tend to use est-ce que as a polite question most of the time. And then how can you practice? Well, you can, of course, write an email, for example, and maybe ask a French speaker to correct it, but not everybody has a French speaker lying around. But you can also practice a dialogue where you book a room, ask for amenities, and maybe confirm your reservation. Another goal we can explore maybe is talking about your weekend. So, what is the vocabulary that you need to learn for that? Of course, the days of the week, activities like aller au cinéma, aller au restaurant, faire du sport, and places like le parc, le cinéma, le restaurant, and so on. For this, the grammar part, you will need, of course, to master the past tense. And which past tense? Well, it would make sense to use le passé composé and l'imparfait. You will also need to learn time expressions such as hier, yesterday, and le week-end dernier, last weekend. To practice, you can write short paragraphs about your weekend and practice saying it out loud. So by tailoring your learning to specific goals, you will be able to see your progress faster. Now, what is learning through comprehensive input?
Hey guys, editing Eden here. I wanted to apologize because actually it's not comprehensive input, but it's comprehensible input. So in case you want to research that afterwards. My mind might have been elsewhere when I was filming, and I just realized just now that I have been saying the wrong word since the beginning of this video.
Comprehensive input means exposing yourself to French that is slightly above your current level, but still understandable. So it's a bit challenging. This will help you absorb grammar and vocabulary naturally, just like a child learning their first language. So how can you incorporate comprehensive input to your learning? Well, first of all, it's good to listen to real-life conversations. You can use beginner-friendly podcasts, of course. Even if you don't understand everything, beginner-friendly podcasts or even intermediate podcasts may help you focus on picking out familiar words and phrases. You can also obviously watch videos on YouTube or even maybe films that are in authentic French. Now, films and series will be a bit more challenging because the French is really natural in there, and it could be difficult for some learners, especially beginners, to understand everything. For example, if the actors are not articulating quite well, if they're speaking fast, that's a real challenge. If you would like to do this, then I suggest maybe slowing down the pace of the video, and that should help you understand words and sentences easily. So you can start with French shows or YouTube channels that have subtitles in both French and maybe your native language. The goal here, of course, is not to use the native language, but if possible, at least the French subtitles. A great tip also for you for comprehensive input is, of course, using children's books. The vocabulary in there is adapted to children, of course. It's also quite simple, and this helps beginners absorb maybe the context a bit more easily. If you are reading a text, and if you come across a word that you don't understand, you've probably already heard me say this before, but it's important to highlight or write down the new words and maybe look them up later in context. If you would like to plan your learning around your goals, you will need to write down what you need to learn, of course, and research the resources to help you. This may take extra time, but if you don't have a tutor with you, this is crucial. And also, if you are learning alone, it's important to actively practice, actively use the language. I know it's not easy if you're not based in a French-speaking country, but you can still practice. You can always practice speaking out loud in front of your mirror. You can record yourself and compare your pronunciation to native speakers. You can use apps as well to find language partners. You can also practice writing, for example, write short paragraphs or dialogues based on your goals. So let's get back to that hotel room reservation. You can maybe write down an email that you would like to send to a hotel to book a reservation, and maybe ask AI, for example, ChatGPT, to correct your email. Keep in mind that AI is not perfect and can make mistakes. It can never really replace a live tutor or a French teacher, but it's a good start. Here are things that you can write about: your daily routine, a recent trip, a conversation at a cafe or a restaurant. There are tons of things that you can write about. Something that can also help you memorize vocabulary is to use French in daily life, especially in daily life situations, even if you're alone. For example, you can label objects in your home with their French names, objects or rooms. You can also think in French as you go about your day, narrate your actions in French. If you're not alone, of course, you can narrate them in your mind. For example, je vais faire du café, I'm going to make coffee, or je vais prendre la voiture, I'm going to take the car. Learning French takes time, especially when you're doing it on your own. What's important is to, of course, focus on your goals little by little, step by step, and to break your learning into small, manageable steps. And of course, to practice consistently. You don't have to practice a full hour each day. It can take like 15 or 30 minutes if you don't have the time, but it can make a big difference over time. If you're learning French by yourself, it's also a good idea to track your progress. You can keep a journal or a checklist of what you've learned and what you still need to work on. So, for example, when it comes to vocabulary, you can write down that you've learned 50 words about maybe food or cooking, or you can also say that you will need to review numbers from 1 to 100. And for grammar, it's also important to write the goals that you would like to achieve. Of course, it's all about the goals here. But in detail, maybe write down the tenses that you would like to learn and practice them. There are tons of exercises that you can find online. I can link the resources in the description if you are interested. So by focusing on learning with context and tailoring your studies to your specific goals, you will make faster and more meaningful progress in French. It's all about learning what's relevant to you and you only, and then building from there. It takes time, it takes practice, but with patience and consistency, and of course a clear and structured plan, you will develop a strong foundation in French. Of course, if you have any tips or if you have any questions, feel free to share them in the comments section. Merci beaucoup d'être resté avec moi aujourd'hui et je vous dis à très bientôt pour une nouvelle vidéo sur Learn to French. Au revoir!